Once Upon a Christmas Time by Thyra Ferré Bjorn. Chapter 7. Christmas Day, following so close after Christmas Eve, was almost an anticlimax. It could have been a very dull day had it not been for the early morning church service. This in itself had so much excitement and beauty for us that it made the day well worthwhile. Before Christmas Eve, there had been time-consuming hard work for every moment of the day. People had been getting up early and going to bed late in order to get everything done. Now suddenly the work had stopped, and during these blessed days, time was used only to enjoy families, friends, and neighbors. The service on Christmas Day was called Julata in Swedish, words that have a very wonderful sound to us who know their full meaning. The Julata definitely originated way back in Catholic Sweden and has been continued ever since those early years. Early on Christmas Day, the mother awakened her family. Sometimes it was as early as 4:30 a.m. that the members of the household had to leave their warm beds. But no one complained, for it was a joy to attend church on this particular morning, and no one would miss it for anything in the world. Most people in the olden days liked to travel to church in a horse and sleigh, and the farmers were kind enough to pick up those who had no sleighs of their own. After coffee and coffee bread, the family was ready to start out under the star-studded cold winter sky, and they waited for the jingle of the sleigh bells. What a lovely sound it was to the children's ears, and for some lucky child there was a flare to hold while standing on the platform in back of the driver. When the others were bedded down under the fur rug, snug and comfortable, off they went through the snow. All along the road they were joined by other sleighs, and the bells on the horses made music on Christmas morning that was beautiful to hear. Then suddenly in the distance stood the church with candles lighting all the windows, and a big bright star gleaming over the door. "Come," sang the sleigh bells. "Come," sputtered the flares. "Come," called the church. "Come to worship the newborn King." There was a scramble to get the horses tied and the feed bags over their noses. No one would think of having his horse stand hungry on this blessed morning. The stars twinkled brightly as the people filed into the church, welcomed by organ music and softly flickering candles. When the church was filled with people, old and young, the first hymn was begun, and what a song it was! It swelled the rafters of the little church and drifted out loud and clear into the crisp December morning. It was an old hymn, one which was always sung on this particular morning, one that belonged to this day alone, and one that the people knew by heart. It would not have been Christmas without "We Hail Thee, Beautiful Morning," or in Swedish, the people sang about Christmas morning, foretold by the prophets of old, a great morning, a joyous morning, on which all heaven's blessings rest, when the young sing with the old, and all earthly prayers are gathered to present to the greatest of earth's sons. The minister speaking from the platform at times became a blur in the children's eyes. Their lids were heavy, as if weighted with sand, and it became harder and harder to keep them open. "And the people who live in darkness shall see a great light," thundered the minister. The candles flickered, and the smoke from them made people's eyes sting. The words from the pulpit felt almost like hammer blows. It seemed the sermon would never end. But presently it was over, and the congregation sang the last hymn, and filed out into the crisp, cold, dark morning. There was still no sign of dawn, and it would be good to go home to food and warmth. But the people took time to shake hands and wish each other a good Yule, Merry Christmas. And there were many invitations to visit in each other's homes. After all, that wonderful Christmas baking had to be eaten and enjoyed. There were no flares on the way home, just the sleigh bells for the ride through the white snowy world. The horses did not run very fast, as it seemed there was no real hurry. Christmas Day seemed to have much more hours than the other days, because we had begun it so much earlier. There was no racing as in the old days when each farmer had tried to get home from church first in order to be blessed with luck for the coming year. But it hadn't been so long ago that there had been a great rush each Christmas after the early morning church service. People believed that the farmer who could drive home the fastest would have the most plentiful crop the following year and would be especially blessed. Families almost threw themselves into the sleighs, and the horses were given a crack of the whip to make them go their fastest from the start. Like the wind, they flew over the snow, and many are the stories connected with the ride home from church on a Christmas morning. There were those who abandoned an overturned sleigh and came home on the back of a horse, leaving their family to be picked up later. There were some who played tricks on their neighbors, tying up their horses or loosening the sleigh from the horse, anything to delay the other fellow. One could visualize how it used to be back in the lively days when everything connected with Christmas had a gain or a loss to it in some way, and each family looked out for itself, trying to get the utmost benefit, whether in riches or health. I'm glad that this was buried with the past, and that in my time there was order and fun on Christmas morning, and a certain dignity that was not characteristic of Sundays during the year. Although Christmas Day could fall on any day of the week, it always felt like a Sunday, and it was, in itself, more important than a Sunday. Christmas Day was one of rest and relaxation. There was not much company or many guests, and dinner was not as special as on Christmas Eve. There might be liver or pork or even fish again, except in certain sections of Sweden where goose was served on Christmas Day. But here again, people had their own traditions concerning foods, and each province followed its own customs. It was always festive, though, and whatever the food, it was served in the best room of the house. But it was a quiet day and a long one. The day after Christmas was also a holiday called Annandagen, which means the day following a big holiday. In Sweden, it was also St. Stephen's Day, a gay day when parties were given and the children were free to roam and run about, a day filled with cheer. There was no church service, nothing special took place. People just took life easy, visited friends and neighbors, and were cheery and gay because the Christmas season was in full swing.